Love, that endlessly over-advertised narcotic of the human species, has been credited for everything from wars to wedding hashtags. It inspires sonnets, mixtapes, and regrettable tattoos written in fonts no sane person should ever choose. But before you hand over your fragile heart, or worse, your Netflix password, ask yourself the one question nobody dares to put on a Valentine's card. Is this really love? Or are you just running on fumes because you skipped lunch? Butterflies in your stomach sound romantic, until you realise the same sensation comes from not eating since 10 a.m. Homer, Virgil, and every other ancient poet called it passion. Modern scientists call it elevated cortisol and low glucose. That tingling rush, you might think it's desire, but your pancreas is in the back, screaming like a toddler in a grocery store. For the love of God, feed me. Even Plato wasn't fooled. He once wrote, "Love is a serious mental disease." A physician today would phrase it differently. Eat a sandwich and you'll stop writing sonnets about Chad from accounting. Imagine showing up in the emergency room gasping, "Doctor, I can't stop thinking about them." A nurse hooks you up to a glucose drip, and suddenly the passion fades before you can even finish the IV bag. Congratulations, you weren't in love, just low on sugar. The symptoms overlap too perfectly. Trembling hands, racing pulse, sweaty palms. Science textbooks call it hypoglycemia. Dating coaches call it chemistry. Either way, you're shaking like a junkie. You sit across from your date, eyes wide, breath shallow, knees weak. They think it's passion. You know deep down it's because you're about 2 minutes away from face planting into the breadbasket. And isn't that the cruel joke? Neuroscience tells us dopamine floods the brain when we fall in love, hijacking judgment like a drunk toddler at the wheel. But the same irrationality appears when glucose tanks. That's why both conditions lead to the same tragic mistake. Texting your ex at 2 a.m. You don't miss them. You just need orange juice. We romanticize weakness as attraction, but let's be honest. If every time you meet someone cute, your body collapses, maybe it isn't Cupid. Weak knees don't mean soulmate. They mean sit down before you faint. And yet culture thrives on confusing the two. Every rom-com parades its heroine sprinting breathlessly through an airport to declare undying devotion. What we never see is the obvious truth. She skipped dinner to make that dramatic run, and half her passion is just her stomach screaming louder than the intercom. Imagine if Juliet had just eaten dinner before meeting Romeo. Shakespeare's play would have been 2 pages. Girl well fed, ignores the creepy guy under her balcony, lives happily ever after. Philosophers weren't immune to the con either. Schopenhauer once claimed, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." Translation: the man needed a sandwich. Kierkegaard threw himself into despair and called it existential dread. More likely, it was low blood sugar. History, in other words, is one long list of brilliant men mistaking hunger pangs for cosmic revelation. Modern science continues to ruin the romance. Studies show that hunger sharpens obsessive focus, blurs judgment, and even makes strangers look more attractive. Which means the stranger you're suddenly destined to be with, they may not be your soulmate. They may just be the human equivalent of fries when you're starving. Tempting, addictive, and guaranteed to disappoint once the craving passes. So before you tattoo their name on your wrist, confess your undying devotion, or build elaborate fantasies about your shared destiny. Ask the one question that could save you a decade of bad decisions. When was the last time I ate? Because sometimes it isn't love making you lightheaded and irrational. Sometimes it's just your body whispering, "Don't marry them, marry a sandwich." If love is supposed to be patient and kind, then hunger is its evil twin, short-tempered, irrational, and armed with a butter knife. Low blood sugar doesn't just make you cranky, it turns you into the kind of person who could end a stable relationship over the last slice of pizza. The overlap's uncanny. Stay in a relationship long enough, and you'll notice that being with someone for more than 6 months and skipping lunch produce the exact same results. Irritability, passive-aggressive comments, and a deep desire to murder someone with your eyes. Science, of course, had to ruin the illusion. In 2014, researchers at Ohio State handed out voodoo dolls to married couples and measured how many pins they stabbed into the effigies of their spouses, depending on their blood sugar levels. The results? The lower the glucose, the more pins jammed in. Translation: your partner isn't toxic, they're just underfed. Forget therapy, forget couples retreats. What most relationships need is a protein bar. Nietzsche once said, "We are always in our own company, wherever we are." Try being in your own company when you're hangry. It's hell itself. You think you're profound, you think you're contemplating existence, but really you're just wandering the kitchen like a lost philosopher, muttering, "Why is there never cheese when I need it?" Hunger doesn't just make you irritable with others, it makes you unbearable to yourself. You spiral into monologues that would embarrass even Kierkegaard. Do I hate my life? Or do I just hate that I ran out of chips? Hunger mimics passion so convincingly, it deserves an Oscar. Sweaty palms, racing heart, obsessive thoughts. These are the same symptoms you describe when you're madly in love. Except when you're hungry, every single one of those obsessive thoughts is about pizza. You're not longing for intimacy, you're longing for melted cheese. Your brain is a traitor, dressing up primal urges in the costume of romance. That text you're about to send isn't a declaration of love, just misplaced lust for carbohydrates. We call it chemistry, that electric spark between two people. Science calls it adrenaline and ghrelin, hormones with zero interest in your dating life. Adrenaline spikes in moments of excitement, whether you're gazing at your soulmate or just locked in mortal combat with a vending machine that ate your dollar. Ghrelin, meanwhile, is the hormone whispering, "You're starving, but you misinterpret it as, you need them." Biochemistry doesn't give a damn about your romantic timeline. It just wants to keep you alive, preferably with fries. It's almost criminal that love songs never mention blood sugar. We get endless choruses about hearts on fire, lips like sugar, bodies electric. But no ballads about the very real meltdown that happens when dinner is delayed by 30 minutes. Imagine if Adele rewrote her songs with nutritional honesty. Not "hello, can you hear me?" but "hello" from the fridge side. I must have called 1,000 times, mostly because I forgot we had leftovers. Suddenly the entire discography makes more sense. Every breakup album could be reinterpreted as low-calorie intake disguised as emotional trauma. And here's the kicker, we don't test for it. We diagnose heartbreak with ice cream, betrayal with tequila shots, rejection with binge-watching sad Netflix dramas, but never with a granola bar. Maybe that pit in your stomach isn't the abyss of lost love. Maybe it's just the abyss of poor meal planning. We've been told for centuries to follow our hearts, but maybe we should follow our glucose meter instead. Think about it. How many wars, divorces, and ugly family dinners could have been avoided with a well-timed snack? Lovers blame destiny. Couples blame incompatibility. Families blame politics. But half the time, what's really happening is that everyone's blood sugar crashed simultaneously, and now humanity is reenacting the Trojan War over appetizers. So before you decide that your relationship is doomed, before you write an 8-page text about how they don't understand your emotional needs, ask yourself, when did I last eat? Because sometimes it isn't love failing, It's just your blood sugar staging a coup. Love is often described as intoxicating, a kind of socially acceptable drug addiction. Neuroscientists nod in agreement. Falling in love hijacks the same brain circuits as cocaine. But here's the punchline. So does that first bite of warm bread. One gives you heartbreak, the other gives you carbs. Which is more reliable? I'll give you a hint. Bread has never ghosted anyone. Freud, the man who psychoanalyzed humanity into one long awkward therapy session, argued that people are motivated primarily by sex and aggression. Admirable insight, Sigmund, but you forgot the third great motivator: snacks. No matter how deeply your subconscious craves intimacy, it also craves garlic knots. The libido might move nations, but hunger moves DoorDash drivers. And in the hierarchy of needs, the cheeseburger has always beaten the soulmate. Consider dopamine, the little chemical celebrity of modern neuroscience. It spikes when you see your crush walking toward you, hair glistening in slow motion like a shampoo commercial. But it also spikes when you smell garlic bread wafting through the restaurant. Be honest, which one has never left you disappointed? Garlic bread shows up. Garlic bread doesn't lie. Garlic bread doesn't text. Sorry, I'm just not ready for a relationship right now. Garlic bread is there for you in the truest, most non-judgmental sense. And if that isn't love, I don't know what is. Culture loves to spin myths about romance. Follow your heart. Sounds poetic, until you realise your heart is just a dumb muscle, pumping faster because your glucose is tanking. There is no cosmic signal in your chest. There's only biology desperately trying to keep you upright, while you pretend destiny is unfolding across a candlelit table. The truth isn't romantic, it's metabolic. You're not following your heart, you're following your sugar crash straight into bad decisions. Evolutionary theory tells us love is a survival mechanism, a way to bond humans into pairs so our fragile offspring wouldn't get eaten by wolves. But so was communal eating. In fact, sitting around a fire tearing apart roasted meat probably did more for human survival than serenading someone under a balcony. Which raises a real question. Who are you truly loyal to? Your partner or the carbs? If you've ever stolen fries off someone's plate, you already know the answer. Carbs will outlive romance every time. Schopenhauer, philosopher and professional buzzkill, once said, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." Try saying that while tunnel visioning on fries. The entire world shrinks to a single plate of food, and suddenly you're a starving philosopher too, convinced that existential truth comes in curly or crinkle cut. Schopenhauer's misery wasn't just philosophy, it was probably hunger disguised as nihilism. And here's the cruel trick biology plays. Both love and low sugar whisper the same seductive lie. They make you believe this is fate, that your racing heart, your sweaty palms, your jittery nerves are proof of destiny unfolding. But your body is a scam artist. It doesn't care if it's reacting to a crush or a croissant. It just fires up dopamine and adrenaline like a pyromaniac with matches. And you, gullible as ever, interpret it as romance. This is why half of human poetry is basically just hungry people writing in metaphors. My love is like a red, red rose. Translation: I saw food colouring and panicked. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Translation: I'm listing menu options. Humanity has been mistaking hunger for passion for millennia, dressing up biological cravings in floral language. The delusion works because both love and food are survival imperatives. We bond to partners so we don't die alone in a cave. We bond to bread so we don't die at all. Both hit the same neurological jackpot. Both trick us into thinking something bigger than us is happening. But only one comes with marinara sauce. So the next time you feel your pulse quicken, Your palms sweat. Your thoughts spiral toward obsession. Stop for a moment and ask, is this romance? Or is there a bakery nearby? Because destiny might not be wearing cologne and ordering wine. Destiny might just be garlic bread. First dates are supposed to feel electric. The glances, the nervous laughter, the pulse racing like you've just snorted espresso through a straw. But here's the cruel reality. Drinking coffee on an empty stomach produces the exact same effect. You think it's love, but it's actually just Starbucks-sponsored heart palpitations. Biology is a scam artist, and on first dates, it's the ultimate catfish. Take blushing, for example. When you see them walk into the room, your face flushes, blood vessels dilating as if you've been struck by Cupid's arrow. It feels dramatic, cinematic, Instagram-worthy. But guess what? One tequila shot will dilate your blood vessels too. Are you blushing because of destiny, or because you ordered the margarita special? One involves soulmates, the other involves salt rims and questionable decisions. Spoiler, they look the same. Psychologists have long pointed out that uncertainty intensifies attraction. Not knowing if they like you back, not knowing how the night will end, keeps your brain hooked like a Netflix series. But nutritionists point out something eerily similar. Uncertainty about your next meal intensifies hunger. The jittery anticipation you feel on a date. It's the same biological script that plays when you're staring at a closed fridge at midnight, whispering. Maybe there's something edible behind the pickles. It's not romance, it's hanger disguised in formal wear. And then there's Shakespeare, the eternal bard of love, who once said, "If music be the food of love, play on, lovely sentiment," until you realise he wrote that line centuries before intermittent fasting became a fad. If Shakespeare had been living on kale smoothies and 16-hour fasting windows, the line would have been, "If protein be the food of love, for God's sake, eat." Romantic poetry thrives on starvation. But actual humans? Not so much. Try writing a sonnet after skipping breakfast. You won't get, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" You'll get, "Why does everything I love eventually disappoint me, including the salad?" Dating culture is filled with lines like, "Oh, how they make me feel lightheaded." That's not passion, it's dehydration and poor meal planning. You didn't eat all day to squeeze into those jeans, and now your body is staging a rebellion during happy hour. But instead of blaming the crash, you pin it on romance. You mistake metabolic failure for fate. You think you're swooning when in reality, you're about one sip of wine away from fainting into the breadbasket. Here's the unsexy truth no rom-com will ever tell you. Your brain runs on glucose. That's its fuel. Romance, therefore, is literally metabolically expensive. Falling in love isn't just emotionally draining, it's also calorically draining. That's why candlelit dinners exist. Not because humanity suddenly decided food pairs well with lust, but because biology demands feed the body, then feed the illusion. The ritual of dinner is survival in disguise. The pasta stabilizes your blood sugar, the wine lowers your inhibitions, and suddenly you think you've found your soulmate. Biology is conning you with carbs. And so we arrive at the ultimate question. Is it their eyes that sparkle across the table? Or are you just about to faint from low blood sugar? You sit there, cheeks flushed, heartbeat unsteady, convinced the universe is orchestrating this moment. Meanwhile, your body is whispering, "Please, for the love of mitochondria, eat something." The cruel trick is that the two sensations, love and low glucose, are indistinguishable. They both make you feel dizzy, irrational, reckless. They both trick you into thinking you've stumbled into destiny. The danger, of course, is mislabeling one as the other, because love at first sight can lead to poetry, marriages, and bad tattoos. But hunger at first sight That just leads to you collapsing into the waiter's arms. And between the two, only one ends with a paramedic offering you orange juice. So the next time you're on a date and you feel those butterflies swarming your stomach, pause. Ask yourself if it's romance or if you've simply ignored food since sunrise. Because nothing ruins a first kiss, quite like fainting into your partner's lap mid-sentence. The sparkle you see might not be love, it might just be the tunnel vision that comes right before you hit the floor. Here's the most underrated dating advice you'll never hear from a relationship coach. Never confess your feelings on an empty stomach. Hunger has a way of turning nobodies into soulmates and strangers into salvation. You think you're bearing your heart, but you're really just bearing your blood sugar. That's how people end up proposing marriage to whoever happens to hand them a croissant. Imagine explaining that engagement story to your grandchildren. It all began when your grandmother passed me a pastry, and I mistook it for destiny. Culture keeps shoving this myth of soulmates down our throats, as if the universe is a dating app algorithm secretly rooting for us. But biology doesn't care about destiny, just snacks. And here's the kicker. A snack has never ghosted anyone, never cheated, never left passive-aggressive texts unread. It's cheaper, more reliable, and frankly, far more satisfying than half the people you'll match with. Somewhere deep down, evolution hardwired you not to seek the one, but the one with food. And honestly, it makes sense. Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "Man is condemned to be free," stirring, existential, deeply profound. But he forgot the real curse. Man is also condemned to be hungry. Freedom is terrifying, but so is staring at your date across the table, while your stomach sounds like a dying fax machine. Sartre gave us existential dread. Biology gave us stomach growls. And between the two, only one has ever ruined a first kiss. Think about dating apps for a second. People pretend they're about love, connection, and fate's invisible hand guiding your thumb. But deep down, swiping isn't so different from scrolling through a restaurant menu. Profiles are entrees, bios are ingredient lists, and photos are presentation. You're not searching for your soulmate. You're browsing for tonight's special. No wonder the whole thing feels like ordering takeout. Swipe, click, confirm. Some people get delivered warm and delicious. Others arrive cold, disappointing, and missing the sauce. Here's a brutal relationship test. Does thinking of them calm you, or does it just delay your Uber Eats order? If your heartbeat steadies when you picture their face, congratulations, maybe it's love. But if you're sitting there convincing yourself that thinking about them is enough to distract you from your hunger, you're not in love. You're just broke and waiting for food. Romance and starvation both make you delusional. But only one can be solved with pad thai. And yes, passion fades. Always has, always will. The honeymoon period ends, the dopamine high wears off, and suddenly the person who once made you tremble with desire now just makes you tremble with irritation when they chew too loudly. But carbs are forever. Nobody writes love songs about spaghetti, but maybe they should. Pasta has outlasted empires, survived famines, and unlike most relationships, never asked where this is going. Because true intimacy, it might not be candlelight and roses, it might just be splitting fries at 2 a.m, grease on your hands, shame on your faces, and zero pretense left between you. That's the kind of honesty most relationships never reach. The fries don't lie, they don't ghost, they don't judge. They're just there, golden, salty, and infinitely more comforting than whispered promises of forever. So before you text them, "I miss you," maybe ask yourself, do you miss them or do you just miss the pizza you ate together? And before you declare eternal devotion, maybe eat a sandwich first. Because nothing ruins romance faster than realizing you said, "I love you," when what you meant was, I'm hypoglycemic. Snack first, love later. Because the body doesn't care about soulmates, it just wants to survive. And sometimes the greatest act of romance isn't saying forever, it's handing over the last fry. Scientists have been quietly telling us something we don't want to hear. Stable blood sugar improves decision making. Translation: eat before deciding if they're the one. Because right now that person you swear is your soulmate might just be a burger in disguise. The cruel irony of biology is that it doesn't just play tricks on your stomach, it toys with your perception of beauty itself. In carefully designed experiments, researchers discovered that people literally rated strangers as more attractive when hungry. Let that sink in. Hunger is the original Instagram filter. Biology is catfishing us, and it's been running the scam since the dawn of time. Karl Marx once argued that history is driven by material needs. Noble, revolutionary, ground-shaking. But let's be honest, in dating, history is driven by caloric needs. Forget the dialectics of class struggle. What we're really living through is the dialectics of hunger. Wars have been fought for resources. Relationships collapse over who ate the last slice. Humanity's greatest revolutions may have been about bread, and so are your breakups. Here's the naked truth. Love without glucose is like Wi-Fi without data. Useless, frustrating, and prone to random disconnections. The bars might be there, the signal might look promising, but try loading a single page and the whole thing collapses. That's your romance on an empty stomach. It looks strong until it's tested. Then it sputters, lags, and finally crashes. People talk about chemistry, but chemistry without fuel is just smoke. So how do you know if it's love or just low blood sugar? Simple. Think you're in love. Wait 10 minutes after eating. If the butterflies vanish faster than your dessert, congratulations. You weren't in love, you were just starving. The brutal simplicity of this rule could save countless people years of therapy, debt, and bad poetry. Eat, then decide. Destiny should never hinge on whether you skipped lunch. Hunger is temporary. Divorce settlements are not. You can solve one with a granola bar, the other takes lawyers, paperwork, and half your furniture. Imagine all the broken marriages that could have been prevented by a sandwich. The prenup of the future shouldn't just cover assets, it should include a clause about snacks. And maybe that's the unspoken philosophy of dating. Love is just the body craving sugar, but mislabeling it as destiny. We've elevated hunger into poetry, into sonnets and metaphors, when half of Shakespeare's burning passions were probably just Elizabethan hypoglycemia. What we call infatuation might just be the body begging for glucose, while the mind dresses it up in romantic delusions. The Greeks invented eros, your pancreas invented hunger. Guess which one is more reliable? The sweet spot isn't in their arms, it's in your bloodstream. Keep your glucose steady, and you'll see them clearly. Not as a saviour, not as an angel, not as the one, but as what they really are. Another human being. Flawed, complicated, and very possibly less interesting than the breadbasket. And once you recognise that, you might just make better choices. So the next time someone tells you they're falling in love, ask them when they last ate. It might not be Cupid whispering, it might just be their blood sugar crashing. The line between romance and hunger is thinner than your blood sugar levels at 3 p.m. You think you're falling into love's eternal embrace, but you're really just falling into low glucose. Modern dating doesn't tell you this, of course. It prefers to dress up your body's biochemical panic as destiny. But the truth, sometimes the grandest declarations of love are nothing more than a stomach screaming through a Shakespearean filter. Albert Camus once wrote, "The struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. Noble, stoic, heroic. But replace struggle with snack, and suddenly Camus sounds like he's finally cracked the code to happiness. Maybe the meaning of life isn't rebellion against the absurd, it's a cheese platter. Maybe the real tragedy of Sisyphus isn't pushing the rock up the hill forever, but doing it without a granola bar tucked in his toga. Hunger is legally blind, slightly delirious, and wandering into traffic. That's why half your soulmate connections dissolve after dinner, because hunger makes you see halos where there are just headlamps. It makes you believe someone's your missing piece, when, in reality, they're just the person standing closest to the kitchen. Biology's scam is making you mistake survival instinct for eternal devotion. And most of us fall for it, because who wants to admit the breadbasket has been playing Cupid all along? Here's the paradox. Your soulmate might not be across the table. They might actually be the breadbasket itself. The one constant, the one who never disappoints, the one who shows up at every first date, like a loyal companion. We've been romanticising eye contact and poetic texts when the real love story has been happening under the napkin. Carbs have always been the silent third wheel, supportive, comforting, waiting patiently for you to realise they're the real forever. But let's be pragmatic. The truest test of compatibility isn't whether you finish each other's sentences, it's whether you still like each other after dinner. Love on an empty stomach is easy. Everything looks brighter when you're faint with hunger. But after the breadbasket's gone, the entrees are eaten, and the bill arrives. Can you still stand their laugh? Their chewing? Their take on pineapple pizza? If yes, maybe it's love. If no, maybe it was just hypoglycemia pretending to be passion. Love makes fools of us all. Hunger makes hangry fools. Combine the two, and you get modern dating apps. A digital buffet of delusional swipes fueled by empty stomachs and empty promises. A grocery store at midnight where everyone's desperate, disoriented, and grabbing whatever looks good under fluorescent lights. So here's my final question, the one that matters more than all the rom-com scripts and all the sonnets ever written. Are you texting them back, or are you just ordering food? One choice ends in regret, the other in fries. Choose wisely.